Does that help answer your question, eh? Your question is answered, yes? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of being able to practice and going with that opening.
You'll find for the majority of people that there is a high level of fear about experiencing everything. In other words, there is usually a high level of fear about humility. And as I said to you, I've been quite blocked for the last year because of there's fears that prevent me from actually being and accepting the truth. So it's the fears that prevent humility from being truly expressed. And many questions that I get asked about this subject are often about our fears. We're often just expressing our fear. So what I would do, if I was yourself, is I'd go home and say, I'd write down, I've got a fear of vulnerability. Because when you no longer have a fear of vulnerability, you will actually be completely vulnerable, but you won't even think you're doing it. It's only, even using the word, I'm being vulnerable, indicates that I'm actually fearful of being vulnerable. Because once you are just yourself, you will always be vulnerable. But I also feel that when you are in a state of humility and truth, you are at your least potential of being harmed, not your most. You see, there's a deep belief on the planet that if I am humble, other people will make fun of me, they'll make my life worse, they'll criticise me, they'll humiliate me, and so forth. But what I've found personally is the more humble I am, and the more truthful I am with everyone around me and myself, and the more humble I am to my own emotional experience, the less that happens, not more. Right? You would think that a guy who calls himself Jesus would be attacked quite regularly, right? But what's happened is initially I was attacked all the time, absolutely all the time. Didn't matter where I went. Everyone laughed at me. I would often have, in an audience this size, I'd often have half of you by this stage, trust me, by the first 5 minutes, half of the audience, I've been to places where half of the audience just get up, walk out the door, right? The rest of them just angry with me the entire time I'm speaking. Very hard to speak when a whole group of people are angry with you. And that was my initial experience. And then I had to be humble. I had to actually allow myself to go through that process of being attacked, and being ridiculed and being condescended to and all those other things, being told I was wrong, being told that I didn't know who I was, being told that I was an idiot, being told I was crazy, being told I needed to see a psychologist, and so forth and so forth and so forth, right? And as I was humble to those experiences and I allowed myself to relate, when I say humble, I mean that I had emotions that I had to feel, grief I had to feel, and fears that I had to feel, that I actually felt. I didn't go, I'm humble to the experience, and then have no emotion. Does that make sense? I actually had to feel every single attack. Now, the more of them I felt, the less it occurred. That's very interesting, isn't it? The more I felt it, the more humble I was to feeling these emotions, the less I was attacked. Whereas you would think the more humble you were, the more you'd be attacked. But it actually worked out completely the opposite. The less I'm attacked. Now, people around me get attacked very frequently about me being Jesus. And I don't hear about it at all. In other words, people who know me get attacked now because they have the same emotions that I used to have, but have now released. Does that make sense to you? And their law of attraction now brings them the attack that used to come to me. Right? Now, I still get questioned, of course, but often I have very fascinating discussions as the questions continue now. Whereas before it was just anger, rage, abuse, all those things, which happen very rarely now. Does that make sense? So my vulnerability, if you want to call it that, has actually allowed, firstly, me to grow, and I have less and less response to what goes on emotionally. In other words, now if somebody attacks me, I don't cry about it for three days. Whereas right at the beginning, I used to. Like I used to have an emotional response to that particular attack. Yeah? Now, if somebody does that, it doesn't affect me at all. I don't even remember it shortly after it's occurred, most of the time, even. But those around me do. So obviously they have similar emotions now to go through, and if they go through the same thing, they will also become more protected and less involved in that behaviour that they're afraid of. So what I've found through my personal experience is this. The more humble I am to just feeling what the experience is, and I mean actually feeling it. I don't mean, hoodwinking yourself out of it or emotion or intellectually reasoning yourself away from the emotion. I mean actually feeling the raw emotion of what's created in an experience. The more I've done that, the less I get attacked in the same manner as I did. Now, to me, that tells me there's a huge power in what you call being vulnerable that you will not recognise until you actually go through that experience. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Yeah?
I just wanted to add to that I found that the more humble I become, the less vulnerable I become to influence. Because in those moments I'm connected with myself, I'm more connected with what I'm receiving, and it might be painful, but I'm less likely to do something to avoid that pain and therefore be manipulated. And it's the same thing with spirits. The times when I've been most influenced by spirits is when I was the least humble, because they're hooking into my avoidance and my addictions, and they're helping me to maintain that state. As soon as I become more humble, I'm more in tune with myself, I'm more in tune with what's coming from me, what's coming from them, and I can make decisions based on what I feel rather than what they're trying to